The RealAgriculture.com canola school is brought to you by Syngenta Crop Protection Canada.
Moisture conditions are fairly good across most of the southern prairies, and the long-range forecast right now is for fairly warm conditions. So what's going on in the soils? Well, the soils are warm, they're moist, there's lots of biological activity, so organic matter will actually be slowly being broken down from the root material from this year and previous years. And so nutrients will actually be shifted from what's been locked up in organic matter and root material. They'll be slowly being broken down and released. So that means nitrogen, phosphorus, and things like sulfate, sulfur will be released. So how much nutrient will actually be in the soil for next spring? Well, that's a good question, because it'll really depend on what happens over the next few weeks during October. We may actually find in areas, in stubble areas, where there was a fair amount of organic matter and root material, with the great moisture conditions we have right now and organic matter breakdown, there may actually be a fair amount of nitrogen there for next spring. So the thing really to do now is wait until soil temperature actually drop down to around 7 or 5 degrees Celsius later on in October, and then actually do some soil sampling to see what you've actually got.
So soil sampling now, in your mind, wouldn't be ideal?
I would definitely not soil sample now. And
okay, now why is that, Ross?
And actually, I should have even brought in a soil thermometer with me, and just to show. But probably odds are at 2 or 3 inches down right now, our soil temperature is probably between at least 10 and probably 15 degrees Celsius.
Right.
And so as a result, perfect conditions for microbes in the soil to be churning away and breaking down our organic matter and releasing nutrients. So there's lots of changes taking place in the soil right now. So you might as well wait until things really cool off, the microorganisms activity really slow down, and that's going to happen once we're kind of approaching that 7 or 5 degrees Celsius. So I'd wait till things cool off in late October before I actually soil sample.
That's actually really interesting, because I think a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people, a lot of retailers are out trying to get soil samples done, yep. And actually I've heard from several people that do soil samples that they're somewhat under pressure because the crop's not getting off, and they're yep. sampling in between swaths in some cases.
Exactly.
But you're saying right now is not the ideal time to be soil sampling.
With my farm, I would not be soil sampling now, because you're going to get a reading of what's there now, but may not give you a very good indication of what's going to be there next spring, particularly for nitrogen and sulfur. We know that phosphorus and potassium don't really change much from year to year, but for N and S, it could make a huge difference. So I would not be sampling right now for next year.
Okay. If we were to do soil sampling today, where it's pretty warm, and you had said we need to wait till it gets a little bit cooler, if we did do it now, what kind of damage are we causing to ourselves? Is it more of a cost thing? We're not getting accurate information back?
You're not getting a true picture of what's going to be there for next spring. Probably the phosphorus and the potassium will not change much, because what we're doing is looking at the inorganic forms. Actually, potassium shouldn't really change hardly at all. Phosphorus might change a little bit. Phosphorus is a little bit more dynamic in terms of what happens. But the big ones would really be sulfate, sulfur, and nitrate, nitrogen. They can change dramatically. And so I probably wouldn't put a lot of faith in the soil tests now in terms of telling you what's going to be there for next spring.
Is there any merit in or is there any reason to do a soil sample, when it gets a little bit cooler here this fall, and then do another one in the springtime? Or is that really you're not getting any different information?
If you do it in late fall, that's going to give you a reasonably good indication of what's going to be there for next spring. But if we have, like in southern Alberta, it's not uncommon to have mild winters. And if we have a mild winter where we have 3 or 4 Chinook events where soil temperatures warm up, we can actually still, during those Chinook events, have nutrients being broken down by microbes, even during these Chinook events. So sometimes nitrogen and phosphorus and sulfur can actually even increase from fall till spring. So if we have a very mild winter, you might even just want to go back and just do some soil sampling in a couple of selected fields back in those same benchmark areas to see if there's been much change from fall to spring. Usually I don't expect too much, but it could certainly happen.
Great. Thanks a lot, Ross.
Okay.